working, you start with basic wood, a lot of stuff that Fran does. So this was a solid piece of wood that I did a long time ago. Okay. I don't recall. Okay. Here, we all do segmented bowls or vases. This is a segmented piece. If you know how to do this, you know what I'm going to be talking about this evening, because you will be doing the same thing that you do for a segmented vase or a bowl. Years ago, we had a gentleman here by the name of Randy McDonald, who unfortunately passed away about 3 years ago. Randy made this, and this is what I'd like to show you. It is so delicate and so fine, little pieces, all right?
It was delicate, just like Randy.
I don't want you to touch it, okay? Later on, at the end of the demonstration this evening, you can come up and touch and see and feel, okay? But I was intrigued by the work that he did. He was, at that time, I believe, the only person in the shop who did open segment holes, correct? Right. So I would go to him and ask him a question or two. But the Scotch nature that he had, he didn't like to respond. I had to learn by reading and watching on YouTube. This.
He may have been hard of hearing.
Do you hear me?
No.
He may have been.
I don't think so. This was my first piece.
Beautiful.
It has no practical purpose. It doesn't hold water. It won't hold any flowers. It's just what I think is a beautiful piece for a display. I have a few things at home in my cabinets that I've made that my wife says, let's show them.
I can. Just a few things, John.
When we got into open segment, I did a bowl. See the pattern in there? Okay. If you notice, my pieces are medium sized. I'll describe that difference in a few minutes. Tonight, Brian was kind enough to bring us one of his works. Brian does beautiful work. I'd call this larger size, correct? Okay. If we want to see something that's really small, similar to what Randy did, our friend Jay was working on this just now, and it's almost complete. Each ring of this took 1 day to create. There are 21 rings.
48 seconds a year.
48 segments per ring. Took 21 days to make, and he's not finished with it yet. Okay?
That'll give you a heart attack. Too soon? Too soon? He would appreciate it.
I made a candy dish. The top fits together the way it's supposed to. I wanted to bring chocolates, but they would have melted tonight, so I like this piece. It combines something else. It's a finial. George, finials. This is simply another piece where you put together the white and the brown woods, glue them together, and then cut them to create the bowl that's there. But let's get in and understand how we make this. I put something together just for tonight, just to show you what we're talking about. We have a waste block, which we're familiar with. And then we have a group of segments that have been glued on. Now, we have what are called open segment plates. Shit. Fran, I need your help.
I can't get down there. Kidding me?
Kidding me?
So we have a group of open segment plates in the tool room, back wall, upper right-hand corner. On each one is labeled what size and how many for the rings. There are 18 pieces on this one that fit in the slots. The one that I was working with to create this has 16 segment pieces that go in here. Now here's what we do with this and the stomper so that we understand we want to do everything so it is centralized, or circle is one on top of the other. We have a stomper that I use for open segments. Jay uses it for another class. It has a top on here. When you measure the diameter of this top as opposed to the diameter of this, there's a difference. This hole, which we can't change, requires the top to be removed. Goes down. We can lock it in place. What happens now is, before we even start, when we do the base piece, we true it up first on the lathe to make sure that it's totally round. We'll pull from the tailstock a drill bit, and we'll drill a slight hole in there just so that we can seat it on here. This is very important. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In that waste block, dead center on the lathe, the tailstock is coming in and we're drilling a slight hole. That hole allows us that when we come on top of here, we can seat it and push it down. All right? So here's what happens.
This is spring-loaded.
Spring-loaded. This is very similar to what you have in your front lawn. It's actually one of the wood
Rainbirds?
Correct. So I pre-cut as determined by what we'll show in a few moments on the wedgie sled, which we're all familiar with from your segmented bowls. Correct? Yes? Okay. So I pre-cut these, and all we have to do is load it on this form. Now, just like on a segmented bowl, we're working with different sizes as the bowl gets bigger. So we widen it and whatnot. So I had, going according to my plan, which I'm going to show you in a few moments, created these to fit on this sample. One more minute. Okay, so I've got my 16 segment pieces. Look at the white. If you count, there's 16 laid out. I put some glue on there. I put some glue on here, right? I take my piece, I load it on the stomper, and I bring it down, and I move this row so it matches or bridges the new row directly below. Understood? Questions?
Well, how do you get it right in the center of it that you need to?
Because it's on the stopper.
No, I don't mean that.
This on here keeps it directly in the center.
He's talking about the overlap.
You put it down that you have the same width on each side of the segment above it.
If you watch me in a few minutes when I show you how we're going to use the computer to generate the cuts, they come exactly that way. It's predetermined. So this comes down and sits right there. And we do something like such and leave it overnight to dry, and we're ready for the next road the next day. Okay? Now,
So you're talking about, you were asking about how do you get this uniform spacing here, right?
Right.
You just rotate it and you just have to land it. Yeah, that's dangerous, isn't it?
For me, it's
Yeah.
very dangerous.
I'll have somebody else look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
let me mention something. The shop bought these for us to use. If you feel it, there's a ridge line. The opening that's in between each one of these is this ridge line. If you try to do very, very fine work, a la like our Scotch friend that I mentioned before, and you put that piece of wood in here, it'll be below or even, and you can't glue it to the next one. So you have to be careful that the thickness of that piece is a little bit above this, all right? That's a warning.
So each ring on that, you have a different one of those white things, a different size.
For your, whatever you're working with, you're going to use this ring exclusively for that job. If you're doing another piece, you're using one of the others. You don't use them for the next ring or the ring after that or before. Your job, the program that you're working on right now, uses just one of these. Right? So you can have a small row, that's that small, a little bit bigger for the next one, a little bit bigger for the next one, but this is the maximum size diameter-wise that you could use for whatever your project is.
Depends on how wide the triangle is, how big the ring's gonna be.
Correct. Same like on a segmented bow. Okay, you're all familiar with that already, so you should grab that concept. Now, how do you get the instructions to do the right cut to fit in there? Our friend, the computer, has a program. The computer is in our resource room. Everyone is entitled to use it.
I'd like to mention that when Randy did this, he had no computer program. He had no rings, no stomper. He was too cheap to buy them. And if you know Randy, he was beautiful, but he did these, he did some magnificent work.
He used his wife's teeth tweezers to put some of the pieces down. This is what he actually told me.
Yeah.
All right. We have a very good friend here this evening, George. George does Christmas tree little pieces, all right? So I thought for George, because I owe him, I said, I'm going to do something for you. So on the computer, I created a Christmas ornament. It is only 4 inches wide and 4 inches high. It's a little ball. It's open. This is what it looks like. It happens to have 2 different woods here, but you can use any woods that you want. Let me show you what package I'm giving George this evening. Always in front of a crowd. Right? Okay. One of the things that the computer allows us to see is the shape of all the wedges as they're built up to create the 4 inches of height.
Can you hold it here? Then we'll all see it.
Let me go on. The computer also tells us how much glue one level goes to the next level. Okay? It's there. You know about it. But here's what the computer really does. The computer gives us a full worksheet. It tells us how much wood we need for the entire project. We can add that up. It tells us how wide the wood should be before we put it through the wedgie sled, because we can put anything in there. It tells us the angle that it should be cut, and it tells us how many pieces we need. George, I look forward to seeing your work. So here's what I'd like to do now. I'd like to bring up a program on the computer and talk about how you can do this. You can't make any mistakes on this computer. You can try, you can erase, and you can go over it again. It's not that hard. I am not totally literate on the PCs, but this wasn't that difficult. I will mention something else, and I was about to use J for something. If you find a picture of something that you would like to make, there is the ability with add-ons to this program to capture that picture into the computer, and the computer automatically measures for you the height, the width, the angles that are to be cut, and it gives you a worksheet. All right? So your name can be Picasso or Goldberg. Doesn't matter. So let's try it. Okay, here you see the entire piece that I just did for George. Here's the side view of the pieces stacked one on top of the other. Here's the amount of glue overlap that each piece has.
How do you measure the glue?
You don't. Here's the cutting summary, the worksheet. Okay? Now let's examine this worksheet. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and do something brand new. This is the first screen for Woodturner Pro. If we look up here, we see there is a base piece. The base that I said was the bottom, and it's already in the system, and it's 4 inches wide. Well, that's a little bit too big for me. I want it to be smaller. So I simply go to it, I backspace, eliminate that, and I want 3 inches. So I hit 3, and I hit the inch mark. Now watch what happens down here to the width of this when I click on it.
Hold off. Oh, yeah, I didn't get
Okay?
it. That's right.
I need a new row to go above that. And my first row is not going to be a solid row like this top piece, which is solid, but it's going to be an open segment row. So I come up here and I open this window and I choose not flat, but I choose open segment. And lo and behold, see what's happened? Well, that's no good for me because that's my base and I need that to be solid. So I'm going to go back and change that again. And I'll say flat. And now I want, down here it says new row. I want another row here. Come on, sucker. Whoops. All right, let's delete this row. Okay. Now this row is exactly the same width horizontally as my base, but I want the vase that I'm going to create to come up as a V. Just like this here, this way, or the way this one went sideways, coming out a little bit. So I can go to this row and I can say, instead of being 3 inches in outside diameter, I want it to be 3 1/4. So I've just changed that little window. You see that?
Yeah, we can see it up
Okay.
there. Yeah.
And
That's
now
why I
all
figure I'd
do
get out
is
of the way.
Click on it, and I'm starting to go that way. Now let's assume that that row has to be open segment. So I am on that row, and I go up to the top left where we were before, where it now says flat, but I change that to open segment. There it is. And in my mind, I want 7 rows to go up. So here's what we simply do.
It takes
Very
out a
hard.
full 1/4 of an inch.
All right, so each one went a 1/4 inch wider. I can make each one a 1/2 inch or 3/4, whatever I want. When I look at this one here, undoubtedly, he's come up some at the bottom. He's come wider here. So he's made this row wider than that one. But as he's come up to this part of the bowl, it's almost a straight line up and down, correct? If we look at Jay's work here, Jay at the bottom here extended each ring so the outside diameter was somewhat larger until he got towards the middle area where it was flat, and then as he came up, he made them a little bit less in diameter. It's not hard to work with this computer. You'll play with it, and before you work with wood, you'll correct it. If you were to work with wood, it would cost you the wood. If you play with this, it costs you nothing. All right? Questions?
So Ralph, I think it's important for them to know that that program is on the main computer in the
Correct.
resource room. This laptop's usually locked up.
Sir?
Is there any special technique when you actually put this thing on the lathe and start to turn it, that you don't get caught in between the segments and tear it apart?
Okay. Good question. When you do something with multiple rows coming up, you cannot put it on the lathe until you put a solid row there. All right? You're going to put your tailstock up against your piece just like you would do on a regular segmented bowl. And you have a piece of wood, what do we call that? The block?
Disc.
Pardon?
The disc.
The disc, right against there. You'll put some pressure on it, and then you can turn it, okay? If you look at this bowl that I made it early in my knowledge of open things. The brown here, the walnut here, and here are solid rings, so I could go in there. Now that's sort of important because you can't reach in when you have something big, unless you are very, very, very skilled. If you're a Fran or if you're a Jay, you may go in there, but I normally would do 3 or 4 rows because that's as far as I can reach in comfortably and do it, turn it, and come back out, all right?
When Randy did the real small ones, he had a vacuum cleaner set up here, and the pieces were so small that when they come off the blade, you know, they go pling. He had a vacuum cleaner there, and he would suck up the pieces in a fresh, clean vacuum cleaner. It's just amazing. I mean,
Something Fran mentioned, I want to alert you to it. When you use the wedgie sled and you have some air on and you're cutting very small little pieces, that hole is a trap. Take some simple tape and just tape over it. All right? Work your cuts. When you're finished, just remove the tape. All right?
and
Glad you mentioned that.
make extras.
You know, normally if you need 16 pieces for a ring like I showed before, I would make 17 or 18 and I would keep them because later on I might discover that that piece may have split and I have to delicately take it out and put a new piece in and then I don't have to cut it again. Okay? All right. So I've given you the warning on that. We've shown that. We did this. When he came in to do this stuff, he would just use our table saws to cut the wood into just pieces that were perhaps 24 or 30 inches in length. They were about yay thick, you know, and they were about yay wide. And I guarantee you that he went home and with a razor, he would slice his pieces. I know he used the tweezer. He did tell me that, right? And his wife and sister or somebody were here on one day. Sir?
When you glue the rings together, if you're putting, there's obviously got to be some glue that comes in the gaps. What do you eliminate that? Do you sand
I'm
it?
sorry. Come up and speak up a little bit more. Let's hear
When
what
you glue the rings together,
Right.
some glue must go into the little gaps. What do you do with that?
Well, you're just more careful. Now, there is, do we all remember when the title bond or whatever, what's the name of the group? Remember when they came and they did a demonstration for us 2 or 3 years ago?
Yes.
No, you weren't here. They gave out some glue bottles as samples. And I don't know the name of the glue, but it's in the gray bottle. Thick and quick. That clears dry, and you don't see it. Okay.
Well, while it's still wet, you can go in there with a Q-tip or a pipe cleaner.
Right.
You know,
You don't really have to, but you can.
Yeah, if you
Pipe
want.
cleaners work very, very well in here. Okay. Q-tips, you're going to leave a little fuzziness. So here's what I hope I'm doing to you folks tonight. I hope I'm encouraging some of you to try this because you're going to find that it's really a beautiful sample of work that you can get out of it. You need a lot more patience because it's a lot slower than anything else that you've done.
What's the shop's regulation on the finishing?
On the finishing?
Yeah.
Same as anything else. You do it at home. All right? You do not finish in the shop.
Really?
well, you can't spray.
You can't spray in here. All right? And most of these require spraying because of the open holes. All right? Habe ich das gerade richtig gesagt?
Jawohl.
There's only one person here who speaks my language. All right? Good.
One quick question. Is the speed that you do the open segment, do you do it at a higher speed that you do? I've never seen anyone do it. It's hard for me to think about how you do it, and your instrument doesn't get stuck. I don't know how. I've never watched Jay or anybody do.
For the most part, you would use the carbide tools because they're much sharper and give a better cut. And you will go up 1,500 RPM on the lathes, all right? You're doing that also on segmented bulbs, all right? So it's not that hard. Not that hard.
Okay, then, Ralph, thanks a lot, buddy.
Okay.
Very good. Excellent. We could use some help. We could use some help on rearranging or unarranging.
Pick up your bottles, please, and trash. Chairs and stools.